What does general manager George Paton have to say about Denver Broncos third-year wide receiver KJ Hamler? Maybe how he fits in this offense with Russell Wilson, plus an update on where he's at with his recovery from ACL surgery. You get that and much more on today's Locked On Broncos special short episode here on YouTube.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Sayre, one thing that we got out of George Paton's pre-draft press conference was a little bit of insight on KJ Hamler. Obviously, for the Broncos' third-year wide receiver, really missed an instrumental part of last season due to tearing his ACL Week 3 against the New York Jets. But George Paton was really excited to be able to see him on film when they all went to Russell Wilson's compound in California, running some routes, right? Not doing too much just yet. But George Paton very excited about the progress, and he said, hey, there's nobody I'm more proud of, more excited about in our building right now than KJ Hamler, because he's been putting in the work with his rehab process. And, hey, things are looking up here for KJ going into year 3.
Well, and I think it's a really good sign, Cody, that George Paton seemed kind of pleasantly surprised by it. I mean, I know that there's been reports out there that maybe the damage to KJ Hamler's knee was a bit more severe than just an ACL injury. I know that was actually even in a post from 9 News Broncos insider Mike Klis looking at the Broncos' top 22 visits. They're allowed 30, but they have had 22. And he mentioned in there that there was some worry about the damage to the knee. So I think George Paton, like, if you watch the press conference, if you listen to kind of the way he talked about it, it was good to hear that he kind of sounded pleasantly surprised, and to hear him say that he's well ahead of schedule. I think that does bode well. I mean, you worry about an injury like that. Is it going to take a full year to recover from an ACL? Is it going to take a guy? Is he going to be able to come back in 7, 8, 9 months? I mean, you just never really know depending on the other damage around it. But man, to see him out there running routes and just kind of jumping around and bringing energy into the building, I think that's great for KJ Hamler, and he's making an impression, obviously, on the decision makers in the building.
Well, what will the process be here as well for training camp? I think that's something that Broncos fans want to know. Now, one thing George Paton mentioned, there's no known timeline. He says, I don't know a timeline yet for KJ Hamler when he could be, fully doing things full speed, no restrictions. I imagine going into training camp in July, the Broncos are probably going to do exactly what they did with everybody else who was coming off of torn ACLs. We've seen it with Albert O. We saw it with Cortland Sutton last season in training camp, easing them into it. There's no need to throw them in and wrap them up full speed right away. I mean, the Broncos will have significant wide receiver depth going into training camp, especially with a 90-man roster. They'll bring in a multitude of guys. Could be the NFL draft, could be undrafted rookie free agents, could just be training camp bodies that they bring in there. But KJ, him working with Russell Wilson, him being around them every single day, and that's one thing that George Paton talked on, Russ is always working in this building, and guys are seeing that. Guys are watching it. That is huge. Now, for KJ to come back, like I said, I hope Broncos fans don't have the expectation he's going to be fully ready for training camp day 1. If he is, that is fantastic. But let it take some time to build up, because there's that mental aspect. And as you alluded to with Mike Klis's report about the knee, sometimes a concern with an ACL, how is the LCL, the outside part of the knee, doing? How's the MCL, the PCL, the meniscus? How are those coming along? And obviously the Broncos are collaborating very closely with their medical staff on determining where KJ Hamler is truly at, and they'll give him the free release as to whenever he'll be able to go. But one element, too, that I think that we are all looking forward to is seeing KJ Hamler here in 2022, Sayre, is the downfield threat. Now, one thing that George Paton said, he said Russell throws one of the better deep balls in the NFL. And having guys that can stretch the field like KJ Hamler, like Cortland, like Judy, I think it's only going to benefit our team and Russell Wilson. I just can't help but think and envision a little bit more of KJ Hamler just getting behind defenses, and hopefully he can get back to that like we saw in the preseason and being one of those guys that Russell Wilson just, boom, chucks it up to. That's something that intrigues me a lot.
That's what I'm longing for, absolutely, to get to be able to see that version of KJ Hamler again. I mean, how satisfying was that play, even in the preseason, right? To see Drew Lock throw the ball that far downfield to a wide receiver. I feel like we haven't seen that in, I don't even know how long. I mean, I know Peyton Manning, he was amazing, but I don't remember him really throwing the ball that far downfield. And to have a guy like KJ Hamler, who is so exceptionally fast. Hopefully he comes back from this knee injury just as strong, if not stronger, than he was before, and just as fast as he was before. Hopefully there's no lingering effects or anything, because like George Paton said in his pre-draft press conference, Russell Wilson is one of the best deep ball throwers in the entire NFL. And you go back, if you watch Russell Wilson highlights, you're just blown away by some of the throws that he makes, specifically to Tyler Lockett deep down the field. I mean, that combination, that to me is the potential that KJ Hamler has in this offense, and with Russell Wilson at the quarterback position, is to be that Tyler Lockett type of deep threat, because there's just not many defensive backs that, hey, if Russell Wilson has the ability to throw the ball 50, 60 yards down the field, there's just not many players in the NFL that can hang with KJ Hamler running that fast, that far. So I think that's it. It's extremely exciting for Broncos country that he's well ahead of schedule, according to George Paton, from that knee injury.
Well, we're excited to see what KJ Hamler will bring to the table in the Denver Broncos offense here in 2022. Broncos country, if you love this video here on YouTube, you love this podcast, make sure you go ahead, submit a review, make sure you smash that like button as well.